This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a non-profit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode number 26.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. Today we're discussing the first Star Trek Enterprise episode, Broken Bow. Joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
So before we get started, folks, we got a brief message asking for your support for Secrets of Star Trek and the SQPN network. And I want to throw it to Jimmy, if you could address the audience for just a second.
So a while back, StarQuest had to make a decision. StarQuest, in case you're not aware, is a nonprofit organization. Our goal is to engage the realm of faith and how it intersects with pop culture. We want to bring people closer to God and closer to Jesus. That's actually why our name is StarQuest. It's a reference to the Bethlehem star guiding people to the baby Jesus. So that's our mission statement. But at a certain point in our development, we had gotten to where we were operating on kind of low power. We were producing one podcast on a regular basis, and we said we need to grow if we're going to fulfill our mission. And that meant we needed to make a financial commitment by hiring someone, and it ended up being Dom. But by hiring someone to oversee production of a whole line of podcasts, which we're now in the process of rolling out. The revived Secrets of Star Trek is an example of that. This would not be happening. This podcast would not be happening if it wasn't for that decision to expand our line of broadcasting. Other podcasts that also have come online now include the revived Let's Talk and the brand new Jimmy Aiken's Mysterious World. So as a result of making the hiring decision and all of the other costs that go into producing a line of quality podcasts, including computer equipment and software, hosting costs online, things like that, we rapidly began to deplete the funds that we had on reserve. And we knew that that would happen, but we also knew that we needed to get the new shows out there for you to listen to see the value in them so that we could come to you and ask for your help in keeping it going. So we haven't run a giving campaign in 2 years. And consequently, our funds are at a stage where they really need to be replenished. So this is the time that we need you to show your support for StarQuest and for the podcast that you love. The way to do that is by going to sqpn.com/give. Once again, it's sqpn.com/give and become a supporter of ours on Patreon. And as normal with a Patreon campaign, we have a number of thank you gifts we'd like to send you as a reward for your generosity. Depending on the level you support at, there are up to 3 of them that are even Star Trek themed. One of them is a book that all 3 of us have. I know I haven't quite finished it yet, but I've really enjoyed what I've read. I know Father Corey and Dom have both read it and really liked it. It's the autobiography of James T. Kirk, and it provides a new and different Kirk-centric perspective on a lot of the different things that happen to him in his career in Starfleet, including, I'm told, a really interesting take on what Star Trek V, The Search for God was really all about. So you want to check that out. Also, we have 2 volumes of an oral history called The 50-Year Mission. Volume 1 covers the first 25 years, which is from the very beginning birth of Star Trek all the way up to the launch of The Next Generation. And then Volume 2 covers the Next Generation all the way up through the J.J. Abrams movies. And since this is an oral history, that means the creators of it went out and interviewed basically everybody they could. They interviewed Gene Roddenberry. They interviewed other behind-the-scenes people. They interviewed writers and actors from the different series and got their perspectives on the series and how it developed and what went on behind the scenes. And it's very revealing. You learn a lot about TV production from this and the different needs and limitations that the producers and writers were operating under. Also, you get into some kind of, areas where there was some friction between people at times. Some of the writers are a little frank about how they wanted to go in a different direction, but they were operating under some rules that they didn't think served the story. You also have some tensions between actors at times. Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan, for example. And so you get a really fascinating behind the scenes look at how the great Star Trek series were made and how they achieved a prominent place in American culture and in our hearts, with all the bumps along the road. So it's a really fascinating pair of reads. We also, if you prefer, we have additional thank you gifts that are themed around either Doctor Who or Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. So check those out. Once again, now really is the time we need to hear from you. If we don't, it will have serious consequences for the future of StarQuest. I don't want to mislead you about that. We made this financial commitment to roll out this new line of podcasts that we're in the process of bringing to you. And if we don't have your support, that's going to have to go away. So we do need to hear from you. Please go to sqpn.com/give. Since this is a podcast, you could pause it and go there right now before you forget. I know if I don't do things when I'm thinking about them, they can fall through the cracks. We don't want that to happen here. We do want to hear from you. Please go to sqpn.com/give today and show your support for StarQuest and help us build that future for the podcasts you love.
And you can go to those websites even on your phone. I've made sure that when we've created
mobile
those,
responsive.
Yes, that we're mobile responsive.
But not while you're driving.
Don't do it while you're driving. Pull to the side of the road right now. Pull to the side and take care of it. All right. So that's all we're going to talk about that for the rest of this episode. Let's talk about Star Trek Enterprise. We previously talked about Star Trek Enterprise in an overview a couple months ago at this point, back in October. And so we talked about the genesis of, no pun intended, of Enterprise and some of the overarching, again, no pun intended, issues related to Star Trek Enterprise. So we're going to kind of concentrate on Broken Bow at this point. So when did it premiere? If you're old enough and you've been around enough, you may have forgotten, as I did. This premiered September 26, 2001. This was, in fact, just a couple weeks after 9/11, and I recall, when 9/11 happened, we were wall-to-wall news coverage on nearly every channel for over a week. We had no entertainment, and I remember when that ended, how I think the first thing I watched was an episode of The Simpsons or something, and how it was kind of a relief to be able to laugh at something. It was such a despairing time. And then, just a week after that, we had a new Star Trek series, which was, which was so energizing and so, again, no pun intended, but so revitalizing at such a sad time. Do you guys remember that? Did you watch it that first premiere?
It was really nice to have an optimistic future again to look forward to, where you didn't have the kind of intense hatreds and intercultural difficulties that we have right now. oddly enough, and they couldn't have, well, I think they actually could have planned this, but they didn't know fully how I think it was going to play out. But Jeffrey Archer as captain really has a George Bush vibe, George Bush when he's at his best.
Right.
You know, he's this kind of happy-go-lucky guy that's competent and leading and stuff like that. And I've noticed at times there's often a resonance between who the American president is and some of the figures in pop culture. And I think that at the time that there was, I don't know how conscious it was, but I definitely got a George W. Bush vibe, at least at that time, from Jonathan Archer.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Father Corey, did you see it as it aired and premiered?
You know, I didn't see it when it aired because at the time I was at seminary. 2001, I was at a seminary, and we didn't have cable. We just had the old school satellite dish where it actually would track the sky.
Mm-hmm. Those the old ones,
and we didn't have antenna, so we didn't get the
old school satellite tracking. I love that.
Instead of the modern DirecTV dish or what have you. But so I didn't get to see it. It was probably about time season 2 came out that I could actually start watching it on a regular basis.
And it aired on UPN. It was still UPN at the time, right? I think it was pretty clearly. Yes.
Yeah. So I had an unusual watching situation too, because I had the dinkiest cable in the world at the time. And so I had a deal with some people. I was teaching New Testament Greek to a group of homeschoolers, and they had better cable than me. So the deal was I would teach Greek to their kids, and they would tape Enterprise for me.
That's awesome. That was like me for Voyager. When Voyager premiered in the late 90s, I was in school, or mid-90s. I was in school at Franciscan University, Steubenville. I didn't have cable at all. I had a dinky black and white. And so my friend Bob Rice, who some of you may know from, he now teaches in Steubenville, he had cable. So we had a standing appointment every week to watch Voyager together.
Nice.
Big Trekkie. So yes,
But by the way, I wanted to mention that Broken Bow, the premiere of Enterprise, has a special resonance for me because Broken Bow is a real place. It's in southeastern Oklahoma, and I grew up in northwest Arkansas. So Broken Bow is less than 200 miles from where I grew up. So that was always special for me. My overall watching this again, I haven't seen this in many years. It was better than I remembered, actually. I really enjoyed this, and I wonder if some of my recollection of Enterprise, which is, as I mentioned in our overview, that it wasn't that good, and then was starting to get better by the end. I think that has more to do with the rest of this season than it did with the premiere episode, which I thought showed a lot of promise for this series. Any first impressions?
I would definitely agree with that. I kind of feel the same way that it was a strong start. And again, as an opening episode, let's put it this way: this is a much better opening episode than Farpoint.
Yes.
Much better.
Right.
And it's a better opening episode than Caretaker for Voyager.
Yes. In fact, this may be the strongest opening episode of any of the series that predated
Emissary. It. Well, I think Emissary is probably better than this. The DS9 opening.
Yeah. Okay. There were aspects
we
of that.
Have different views on that.
It's fairly very close. Very close.
Yeah. I mean, they're both strong opening episodes. Yeah. So, I mean, it's more of a comparison, which is stronger of a strong episode,
Right. One thing that was interesting is I think a lot of Trek fans forgot when Star Trek Discovery was announced and we saw the first of the new Klingons from Discovery and how different they looked, that there was a similar controversy for Enterprise, which is Enterprise is a prequel. And when people saw the Klingons on Enterprise, they were mad that they looked like next-gen Klingons and not like original series Klingons without the head ridges. There was a bit of controversy over that among certain groups of fans. I mean, not me. I didn't care.
I don't think it was as bad. I think the new Klingon designs are almost universally disliked from what I can tell. And this was more of they changed the makeup and they had to go one way or the other, and right. even Deep Space Nine had already showed us Klingons from Kirk's era,
Right.
with the head ridges.
And Worf kind of gave us a bit of a, not an explanation, but a kind of a, hey, something happened
Reference.
and we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
And they eventually paid that off in season 4 of Enterprise.
But another aspect of there was a similar controversy because of being a prequel was people felt like the NX-01 Enterprise looked too advanced. It looked more advanced than NCC 1701. And there was
That was, it's the same complaint that came up with Discovery. And,
Yes.
as I said when we talked about Discovery, that I don't have a problem with that. Once the 1701 Enterprise looked what they thought was top of the line, state of the art, science fiction spaceship
in 1964. Right.
And, the NX-01 Enterprise looked like what they thought in the, year 2000, a state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line science fiction-y spaceship would look like. And
Right.
Discovery looks like what they think a top-of-the-line science fiction-y spaceship would look like from today. So-
Enterprise, though, I don't think the NX-01 has that. I mean, you guys are more into starship design than I am, but I know one of the things the producers did was they took like a tour of a submarine down here in San Diego,
Yes.
Right.
and said, okay, we need to make this is a more primitive time than Kirk's time, so we need to make it look more cramped. Not like the giant space hotel Jean-Luc Picard is concierge on.
Right.
So they made an effort to make it look more cramped, more metallic, less pastel. They brought back design elements, and they actually changed these over the course of the seasons, where, how Enterprise, the original series, had these red, yellow, and blue rectangle lights on their displays.
Yes. Yep.
And you actually see those on the NX-01, and they get progressively more complex through the seasons as they're nudging the design towards Kirk's era. But the other things, like they have a grappling hook instead of a tractor beam.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other things are cosmetic, and I don't like the fact they just changed the name of photon torpedoes, and even stupider, they just changed force fields into hull plating. So the standard order is polarize the hull plating,
Right.
when it means the same thing as activate force fields in terms of its dramatic content. It's the same thing. I thought that was just cosmetic and stupid, but they are at least trying to make this more primitive.
I think that, but I think though that serves the idea that in a previous time they didn't have force fields. They had to go with an ablative hull that absorbed the energy, and that's
fine, but you shouldn't have to turn it on.
Okay. Well, but of course it serves a dramatic purpose to say, the dramatic purpose is we're going into battle, we're preparing for battle. I mean, you'd have to have something. I suppose you could say red alert and do that whole thing.
Battle stations or something.
Stations,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think fans got over that, and I think fans will get over the whole.
I never did.
The past advanced tech. Well, I mean, over the past advanced technology. They'll do that with Discovery, I think, as well. So we start with a young Jonathan Archer with his dad building a model of a Warp 5 spaceship, and it sets up the narrative, the ongoing narrative that we're going to deal with, at least in the first season. But it sort of runs throughout, but mostly in the first season. The Vulcans are holding back humans from space, and that makes Archer unfriendly toward them.
That's really nice, actually. We get these kind of idyllic images of Archer and his father. We know his father's a good guy. We know his father died and didn't live to see the fruition of his work. And the Vulcans were one of the reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And that sets up on a dramatic level nice tension between Archer and Vulcans. He's got a real reason to dislike them. Now, a lot of fans did not like that the Vulcans weren't our best buds right from the beginning.
Right.
But you have to start somewhere dramatically. If everything's perfect from the moment you start, your story goes nowhere.
I like the fact that we took the Vulcans, who were our best friends, quote unquote, in the original series and in the other series, and made and created a little bit of tension in there so that we could grow in a relationship with them. I think
and it
it made
flips them. They were always arrogant and superior, even once they were our best friends.
Yes.
Well, you think of it from the Vulcan, the way they put it from the Vulcan standpoint of, we need to help this race get to the point where they can go out and be productive members of the universe, if you will. They're, because they like it or not, they were advanced beings, both, culturally and technologically and everything in all these ways. And of course, then, the issues of Vulcans and logic and all that's, they thought that their way was the right way to do it. That, when humans can hit this point where they can be like us, then they're ready.
Right.
They weren't being presented. It's kind of funny because they weren't being presented as the bad guys, just almost over
the nannies.
Nannies. There you go.
Helicopter parents.
Yep, exactly.
So we get this Klingon ship crashes in Broken Bow, and you have a Klingon being chased by what we will later learn of the Suliban. And one of the things I was thinking is, why is the Klingon running from a fight?
Mm-hmm.
Why is and then why does the storage shed explode? Like that seems like a very dangerous storage.
I think it was supposed to be a silo, like a grain silo.
Yeah, well, they said it was a methane explosion.
Yeah.
You do have gases build up. You also may have ammonium nitrate fertilizer stored in there.
Right. Yep. Yeah, they said it was a methane explosion, but
okay, wow, then it was gas buildup.
Yeah. So, but it seemed like a very dangerous place. But the bigger thing was that you had a Klingon running from a fight, and that just seemed out of character a bit for Klingons.
Yeah.
Then you have we go from there, and we have Archer coming to the Enterprise. This is our first time seeing the captain coming to the ship, and they do once again what we've seen in Voyager,
the tour,
Star Trek, motion picture, and I think we kind of even get it in Deep Space Nine, which is the tour, the coming in a shuttle or shuttle pod, approaching the ship and flying around it to give the fans a nice view of it.
I liked bumping into it this time.
That was scratching the paint.
That was a good one. We're told that the ship can go warp 4.5 to Neptune and back in 6 minutes. Well, if the maximum speed of the ship is warp 5, I'm not sure how they're going to get to the next planet, the next star system, in their own lifetimes. It always bugs me when they do stuff like that.
The warp scale is
it's logarithmic, I know, but
exponential.
It sort of depends on who's talking at what time, what kind of scale it is. We get introduced to the various crew members. Mayweather is another Harry Kim, a little less green, but just about as eager as Harry was. He has the least experience in space.
I think he's the least successful of the initial characters long term. I think they never really got him. I mean, we met his family later on.
Yeah.
But he never really, I think kind of like Harry Kim, I think Harry Kim actually succeeded more.
Yeah.
He never really kind of fully clicked and deepened.
Yes.
No.
Him and the security officer. I just
Malcolm.
Malcolm. Yeah.
Malcolm did.
Yeah. When
we learn about his Section 31 background.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. This guy gets way more interesting.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yes, he did. I think I really liked Jonathan Archer as captain. Sisko is still my favorite captain, but Archer was good. I think he was a good. I think Scott Bakula as choice was they went for a known actor. He had been in Quantum Leap before that, and was well known. And I think they got a really good choice there, and I think he did a very good job with Archer. And I think Jolene Blalock plays a good Vulcan.
She was good. She was good.
Yeah, I mean, the tension among the crew was well played. Well played. They mentioned Zefram Cochrane a few times, and we even get an image
see him
of what's the actor's name?
James Cromwell.
James Cromwell, who played him in First Contact, and by reference or by context, Star Trek First Contact had just come out, like a year or two before at the most. So it was still very new and in people's under consciousness about this. So that's one of the reasons I think why they picked this time period and based it on Cochrane. And it's Cochrane who is the first one to use the phrase "go boldly where no man has gone before,"
and did it properly
and fixed it grammatically. That's right.
So First Contact was 5 years before. It came out in 96.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was still recent enough. I mean, it was people were still watching it. So I mean,
yeah.
Also, the split infinitive rule is a bit of normative linguistic nonsense. English has been using split infinitives for centuries.
Yes. Okay. I will harness my inner pedant, and we get a little bit of the temporal Cold War introduction. That's going to be the arc for this for at least a couple of seasons.
Yeah, they finally kill it off at the beginning of season 4. It was something that the network demanded, basically.
Right.
The writers did not want it, and they had to tack it on.
It felt, go ahead, Father Corey.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we ranted about it pretty good amount on the our overview of it. I did like the effect in that room, in the time room. I always love that effect where it's kind of like it looks like it's you see the motion before he actually makes the motion is what it looks like.
Right. I like that idea. You can kind of see a few seconds into the future. And a fight in that sort of room, it becomes very interesting. We are, let's see. We have the dinner with T'Pol. I found was very interesting between Archer and Trip Tucker and T'Pol. She's a vegetarian, and you know what? She comes off the character as kind of racist against humans. I mean, she's always making these cracks, but like very clearly, not even just kind of. She very clearly does not like human beings. And we smell, we are barbarians when it comes to eating food. And she's got the superior attitude. And she very quickly becomes unlikable, which is a lot of fun. And then she comes back from the brink in subsequent episodes, of course.
She kind of uses like less violent Klingons.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, I think she had more respect for Klingons than she did for...
Well, she would. They're more violent. She's got to give them more respect.
So, and then we have Hoshi, the communications officer and translator, because we don't have a working universal translator in this time period.
I really like Hoshi. Hoshi, I think, is awesome.
Yes,
and she not only do I love the fact that they are attempting to do some actual real world linguistics on the show. And showing us how we eventually get to the universal translator, but also Hoshi is not, an explorer,
right? And
she's got the phobias about we're in this experimental tin can. Is that noise and vibration I'm hearing normal?
Exactly. Right. And she's got those normal fears of someone who's. She didn't necessarily sign up for this dangerous stuff. She got kind of
last minute semi-drafted by the chance to make linguistic history.
Right, exactly.
I did like where she basically tells off T'Pol in Klingon or in a Vulcan. Yeah. I was told to speak English on this trip.
Right. I thought it was interesting. Words that Hoshi couldn't translate from Klingon because they were proper nouns includes the word Rigel. Rigel is an English or Earth word for Rigel.
Well, and there'd always been this issue in Star Trek because we've heard about Rigelians and Rigel planet number X and things like that.
And Vulcan, for that matter.
Since the original series. But Rigel is a star in the real universe, but it couldn't, it's like this super giant, star that wouldn't possibly have the kind of planets that the series has talked about it having. And this actually solves that. If Rigel is a proper name in a different language for a different star than the one we know as Rigel.
Interesting. Although in universe, the Vulcan's star is 10 Eridani, and recent headlines have said there is an exoplanet around 10 Eridani in such a place and of such a size, they think, that it would be like what Vulcan is in Star Trek, hot desert-like planet. So
they haven't yet been able to verify, though, that it has no moon.
Right, exactly. So transporters are not yet reliable or safe, so they take a shuttle down to Rigel 10, and that causes issues in the story, trying to get back to the shuttle and fly away later on. They're walking around this alien planet for the first time for many of them. We have dancers in skin-tight catsuits, of course, because we have to have
Gene Roddenberry.
Yes, sexy time.
Yeah, even though he was dead by this time.
Yes.
Business or network suits.
Yes, network
suits are going to want that.
Well, because we also get the
softcore porn decontamination scene,
smearing gel on each other. Like, okay, so why do they have to be in the same room? Can't they smear the gel on each other in their own separate stalls? Could they not just take a shower in the gel? I mean, come on.
All kinds of ways to get yourself decontaminated that don't involve rubbing on each other.
Exactly.
Just remember, sex sells.
Yeah, well, apparently it did. So I thought there was a very nice moment when they were on Rigel 10, when Trip reacts to a mother who, to him, it looks like she's torturing her child, and it turns out she's weaning her son off of methyl oxide, which is part of their natural biological process.
She's air weaning him instead of milk weaning him.
Yes.
Yep.
T'Pol says, humans can't refrain from drawing conclusions. You should learn to objectify other cultures so you know when to interfere and when not to. That's an interesting way of putting it. What do you think of her statement that we should learn to when to objectify other countries?
I think it's badly phrased. It's like, let's objectify other people, treat them like objects. No.
Yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate turn of phrase.
It would be better to, and there's probably a term that anthropologists would use that exists for this, but they have a certain level of clinical detachment, from other cultures.
Well, and I kind of found it ironic because that's what the Vulcans did to humans: is judge their cultures, the cultures of humanity against their own. And found it lacking against their own. So it was kind of an ironic statement of, you Vulcans did that to us.
It would have been nice if Trip could have come back with that you mean like
exactly.
Like Vulcans did with humans or didn't?
Yeah.
So Archer runs into a Suliban who has rejected their client status in the temporal Cold War, and tells Archer about it. She names the Cabal. She says the price of evolution was too high because the Suliban were being evolved by whoever their masters in the Cold War were. And we learn that the Cabal is trying to ignite a civil war in the Klingon Empire. That's their aim. So what we learn quickly is that the temporal Cold War, if it's successful, will change Star Trek history from what we know as fans. That the Kirk, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, all that sort of history would be changed. And so we very clearly...
we'd be on a new Kelvin timeline?
Apparently, yes.
I was going to say, or a new ship called Discovery. No.
Yeah, right. And speaking of the going for a submarine look to the Enterprise 01, we have the scene when they're in at the Suliban planet, where they're in the cloud layer, and the Suliban are shooting charges into it. Very much a classic depth charge
submarine
scene. Submarine depth charge scene.
Except they established that this planet has a phosphorus layer in its atmosphere, and you're discharging energy weapons in the phosphorus layer? Really? What's to stop the entire phosphorus layer from going off?
Exactly. They must be special.
They weren't energy. They were just pulse.
Special non-explosive explosives. Right. Use a different word instead of phosphorus, folks. Just do that. Like, talk some kind of inert gas.
Any of the Nobel gases will do.
Well, another moment of discontinuity was when they're in that time chamber, and Silik, the Suliban leader, tells Archer, "Don't fire that weapon in here. It's dangerous to fire it in the temporal flux," and then he does it.
Yep.
Well, is it dangerous or not?
And he got knocked on his backside for the privilege of doing it too. So
exactly. We get the first use of the Enterprise's transporters on a human when Archer gets pulled out of there. It's in a very dangerous maneuver.
I think they did that too soon in the series, and they did it too. They then later did it too casually to other people. I think they needed to milk that for more. They should have waited longer before they did it to a human, and then they should have followed up with big questions. Am I the same person, or was I torn apart back there?
Right. Exactly. Well, that's the thing is because remember the reason
Archer should have been having all kinds of tests run on himself. It's like that thing is safe for food transport, but Dr. Phlox, I need you to give me every kind of test in the world to see if I've been altered in some way. Right.
And then we have to remember that the reason the transporter exists in the first place was because in the original series it was too expensive to build a shuttle set and would take too much time out of the episode to have them flying around. Well, that's not the case anymore in Enterprise, and so we could have been just as well having them flying to and from the surface on a shuttle. I mean, and in fact, the Orville just has a shuttle, and they do that in every episode, and it works fine.
And I don't mind them gradually crossing the barrier with the transporter as we get, to get us closer to Kirk's time. I just think this was too soon, and they didn't build it up or follow it up enough.
Right. You're right. It was a dramatic plot point for the series that they kind of just threw out the window too soon. That could have added some nice story drama.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the episode, we have Archer coming to terms a little bit with the Vulcans.
Oh, you know who it should have been? The first person to transport? It should have been Hoshi. Because then she's a junior officer and she's the least on board with the transporter thing. That would open up all kinds of dramatic possibilities. Like, Hoshi, if we don't do this to you now, you're going to die. Yes or no? And she finally consents and then has massive buyer's remorse afterwards.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just in many ways, like McCoy did for a long time about the transporter.
Yep.
So as I was going to say, at the end of the episode, the resolution is that Archer he pretty much recognizes he holds preconceived notions about the Vulcans based on his father's dying before he could complete his work and blaming the Vulcans for holding humans back and causing that, and so he changes his opinion kind of a little bit based on T'Pol, and maybe T'Pol is changing her opinion a little bit based on her experience on Enterprise. And so we kind of leave on this idea that T'Pol was supposed to be a temporary officer, and so maybe she's not so temporary. She'll stick around for a while.
Yeah, it's standard Epic of Gilgamesh thing. You have Gilgamesh and Enkidu. They come together, they fight, they become friends.
Right, exactly.
Which is, now that I think about it, this is the one podcast where I could make that literary illusion. People would actually know what I'm talking about.
well, Darmok and Jalad, that's Tanagra. Yeah. When the walls fell.
One character that I've always kind of enjoyed in Enterprise is Phlox. And I love his, I love what you did to the place. And, he comes in, he brings in all his animals and he brings in all these alternate, which, that really makes sense where, kind of that holistic medicine approach, but different.
I like the alienness of the medicine.
Yeah.
Right.
And Captain Archer's expression, he's talking about, oh, yes, their droppings are rich in regenerative enzymes. And he's like, ew.
But yeah, I mean, you would imagine that the whole galaxy would be full of all of these things that might be wonderful medicines for human beings that we just don't know of, and that would be out there to discover, and that someone like Phlox would perhaps know about it. And if he is taking part in this medical exchange program, coming to a primitive place like Earth, which is barely warp capable, and he would be the sort of person who would be interested and outgoing, and I mean, he's a better Neelix in that sense. They've learned lessons. So
He doesn't have the annoyingness factor that Neelix has.
No.
Right. He's earnest and joyful without being overbearing about it, I think is the idea. So did I miss anything? Is there anything else we want to say about this episode, Broken Bow? I mean,
other than it's set 10 years too early, but then, I've beaten that drum before.
Okay. Father Cory, any notes that I missed? Okay. And we did have a scene in the Klingon High Council chamber at the end. I didn't mention that, which was interesting to see that first encounter with them.
I do like, actually, I did like that where they didn't, Hoshi didn't actually say what he said, because I'm sure it wasn't thanks. I'm sure it was something like, if I ever see you again, I will skin you alive.
Right. Because there is a Klingon war coming
which is
up.
Klingon for thank you.
Yeah.
There are, examples of diplomatic mistranslation in human history, where you've got the two leaders on both sides actually say things that the translators realize, if I translate that literally, this whole deal's going to fall apart, and they will deliberately mistranslate. There's a famous example of that when Queen Elizabeth I was negotiating a treaty with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, and in order to satisfy the Sultan had proposed language that the Queen of England was going to show him true obedience. And the British diplomats realized there's no way that Queen Elizabeth is going to agree to truly obey the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. So they translated it as show loyal friendship.
From a certain point of view, that's yeah. All right, so I think that's all from us on Broken Bow. It's not much more for us to say, but we want to hear from you, the listeners. What do you think of Broken Bow, and what we had to say about it, or what your opinions in addition to it? So if you can, go to sqpn.com/trek or to the SQPN Facebook page and leave us some feedback. Find the post related to the show and leave some feedback there. Send us an email to trek@sqpn.com. You can find links relevant to our discussion on our show notes on sqpn.com. Please, if you can, share the show with your friends. Other Star Trek fans out there may be interested in hearing a new podcast about Star Trek like ours. And we would greatly appreciate it if you could share it with others. That's how our audience grows, and that's how we continue doing what we're doing.
And please do go to sqpn.com/give. We really need to hear from you right now, because this show and others won't be able to continue without your support. So go to sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity, and please do it today while you're thinking about it.
Yes. And so we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing Star Trek Discovery's first episode, The Vulcan Hello. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Live long and prosper. That's a Vulcan goodbye.
And Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, we can't be afraid of the wind. This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.